Hello, dear students. Hope you must be enjoying your time. Uh, Americans are they're very different. We'll start our today's presentation with a very light mood. And they always go, you see, they work against the word. So, for example, that when we mixed sugar and tea, we always try to rotate the spoon in right hand. They do it on the left hand. Uh, when we switch our light, we switch it on downwards, they switch it on upward. When we play football with the help of our foot, and we don't wear the helmets, and we don't have these kind of sophisticated, other things with us. But they play football with their hands, and they do wear the helmets. But if you look at the outbreaks of the different diseases, they cannot do much against the outbreaks. They cannot have the different strategies about the outbreaks of any disease as we have in case of coronaviruses. We have seen that all the universe, all the countries in the world, they have faced the same problem. They cannot adopt any, or they were unable to adopt any different strategies to overcome the disease. Now, the problem that we will discuss today, and we'll start with today, is they have been associated, the organism have been associated with the outbreak. And we will start our discussion on two different organisms, which are obligatory intracellular organism, and they are referred to as the Rickettsia. If you recall your memories with reference to the classification of the bacteria, you must know that we have some obligatory intracellular organism like Chlamydia and Rickettsia. The obligatory intracellular organism like Rickettsia, they can grow only within the cell. They cannot grow outside the cell. The important diseases which are really caused by these agents, they can be classified into almost what you can say, they can named as the typhus. And this typhus, maybe it's an endemic typhus or epidemic typhus. The typhus diseases caused by Rickettsia, they are very important in the developing countries where there is poor hygienic conditions, overcrowding, and things like that. We have another category, or the name of the disease caused by Rickettsia, which we call as the spotted fevers. And within the spotted fevers, we have the Rocky Mountain spotted fevers, the Q fever, the anaplasmosis. Now, the Rocky Mountain spotted fever is spotted fevers, of course, they are very prevalent in the United States, particularly in the southwestern states like North Carolina, Virginia, and North Carolina is my place of residence over there. We have a very, series of mountains over there, which are referred to be as Rocky Mountain. And these mountains, they do have some of the reservoirs, some of the ticks and fleas, and but that bites, and the one can get the disease. And we have another group of what we call as the ehrlichiosis. So broadly speaking, the agent of several important diseases like the Rocky Mountain spotted fevers, what we call as the fever, we have the typhus, and the less important recurrent diseases which are endemic. They are the typhus. They are important in the developing region, but they are not that much prevalent. As we just said that we have two main groups of the human infections caused by Rickettsia, the spotted fevers, including the Rocky Mountain spotted fever, the Q fevers, and anaplasmosis. We have the typhus, we have the endemic or epidemic, and we have some other diseases. Now, the vector is the most common reservoir and play important role in the transmission of disease. These are the arthropod-borne diseases. We need the vector in the form of fleas, in the form of lice, in the form of other thing. And particularly the ticks belong to the genus Dermacentor. The Dermacentor adarsoni and Dermacentor vidibellus. These are the two different species of the Dermacentor tick that act as a reservoir and they transmit the disease. So most of the recurrential diseases, they are transmissible with the help of arthropod-borne vectors like fleas, ticks, and sorry for this. Okay. Now we have very important species. We have the Rocky Mountain spotted fever. It is caused by Rickettsia rickettsii, and the rickettsial pox is another disease which is caused by the Rickettsia acari. So Rickettsia rickettsii and Rickettsia acari, they cause the Rocky Mountain spotted fevers and Rocky and the Rickettsia pox. And these two diseases, they are really very disturbing. The epidemic typhus is caused by Rickettsia prowazekii. And instead of, this is perhaps the only organism. The humans are reservoirs over there. In case of endemic or mutant typhus, we have this the Rickettsia typhi. Scrub bug typhus is caused by Rickettsia susumagaceae. And Q fever, which is caused by the inhalation, and it is transmittable from one person to another person, is caused by another organism of the genus Coxiella, which is called as the Coxiella burnetii. And human ehrlichiosis is caused by the Lichia cafiensis. Different names, different species, different mode of action, transmission, different structures we have to learn to do this. So we have the Rickettsia rickettsii, Rickettsia acari, Rickettsia prowazekii, Rickettsia typhi, Rickettsia susumagaceae, Coxiella burnetii, and Ehrlichia cafiensis. Now, if we look at this, all of these diseases, with the exception of just one, they are transmitted through the arthropod vectors, like the fleas, the mites, the lice, the ticks. They are responsible for the transmission of this disease, except you see the Q fever, which is caused by the Coxiella burnetii. This is transmissible from human to human. So we have to keep in mind all these things. The Rickettsia rickettsii cause Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is prevalent in the United States, and they have almost 1,000 cases in a year. These are not that common, but the cases do occur. And the Rickettsia pox is caused by Rickettsia acari. Epidemic typhus, endemic or mutant typhus, this is what we call as caused by the prowazekii and typhi. Scrub typhus by susumagaceae. Q fever, this is actually the Curie fever. Q is from the Curie, Q-U-E-R-R-Y. Because the initial cases of this infection were very difficult to diagnose or to identify, and that's why they were given the name of Curie. So it's a Q fever caused by Coxiella burnetii. And we have the human ehrlichiosis, which is caused by Lichia cafiensis. Now, if you look at the important properties of the Rickettsia, they are rod shapes, short rod shapes, and these organisms, they're too small, although they're gram-negative, but they are too small to be seen with the help of ordinary microscopes. So we cannot see the Rickettsia organism because of the help of ordinary microscope. They do have a cell wall, and their cell wall resembles with that of the gram-negative rods, but they're poorly stained. They're poorly stained with the gram stain procedures, so we cannot see them under the microscopes. We'll have to follow the other ways and means to visualize the microorganism under the microscope. The organism, they are obligatory intracellular organism, what we call as the obligatory intracellular parasite, because they are unable to produce energy which is required for the reproduction process. So all those organisms, which are obligatory intracellular parasite, as we know that the viruses, they are obligatory intracellular obligatory intracellular particles. So in order to generate the energy for the replication process, these organisms have to depend on to the human cell, the host cells. In other words, we can say that the obligatory intracellular organism, they need living tissue for the growth as we need in case of viruses. So these organisms, they can grow in all cell cultures, in experimental animals, on abrionated eggs, but they cannot be grown onto the artificial media. The Rickettsia, they grow by means of binary fissions, and there is a unique property of this organism, what we call as the wheel flex test. Now you see
various recursia, such as the recursia Prowazaki, recursia recursi, recursia Susumagasi. They have some antigens, and these antigens, they cross-react with the antigen of the Proteus vulgaris, if you remember. Now, this is what we call it the Wheel-Fleck test. It detects the anti-recursial antibodies in patient serum by the slide agglutination test. Now, the infectious dose of these recursial cells, particularly the what we called as the Coxiella burnetii, is very, very low. Maybe this is just one cell is required for the disease protection process. So this is very infectious organism, particularly the Coxiella burnetii. So organisms are obligatory intercellular organism, depend for the energy onto the host cells. They cannot be grown onto the artificial medium. So it's very hazardous to grow them in the artificial medium in the laboratory. So we normally, you see, go for the serological test for the identification of the microorganism. All those microorganisms which are difficult to grow, which need living cell line to grow, which are very hazardous to grow, we have to depend not onto the isolation, but onto the serological diagnostic procedures available in the laboratory. If you look at the transmission of this disease, the organism, they have a very difficult and a different aspect to survive. They maintain in the nature in the arthropods, like in the ticks, the lice, the fleas, and like that. Mites also, you see. But there is one exception, and that is what we call as the bite of the arthropods, which is not a transmitter. This is a one example in that. Now, the disease is produced when the ticks, the dermacentric ticks, they bite, and the organism then enters into the blood, and all the recursial diseases, they are caused by the bite of arthropods, except the Coxiella burnetii, which is caused by the inhalation into the lungs. So human-to-human transmission is with the Coxiella burnetii. The recursive diseases, as we have seen, that arthropod vectors are the responsible for transmission. These are the reservoir. So these are what we call as the zoonotic diseases. All recursive diseases, they are the zoonotic diseases, except the epidemic typhus, which is transmitted by the human body louse. Human body louse. The organism, after entrance, it circulates in the bloodstream, and this means that it establishes what you call as the bacteremia, and then, of course, this causes the infection of the endothelium of the blood vessels. Now, the pathogenesis of this group of microorganisms is that the typical lesions which are caused by these recursive diseases, this is what we call as the vesiculitis. The incidence of these diseases, they are enhanced in poor hygienic conditions. If you see the living in a camping, particularly in the wooded area where these ticks, they're very common. And typically after intense organism causes vesiculitis. There is damage to the endothelial cell wall, and this damage, as you see, of the vessels is characteristic appearance of the rash, then edema, and there are hemorrhages due to the increased capillary permeability. The organism, although you see it's a gram-negative organism, and we can assume that there is a production of endotoxins, but there are some evidence also for the involvement of the endotoxins produced by the microorganism in the involvement of the various signs and symptoms. This organism, it does not form any enzymes, cytolytic enzymes, or it does not have any exotoxins. And vesiculitis is the prominent feature of this disease. The basis for these organisms, unless otherwise, you see it involved, and there is no endotoxins, no exotoxins,
Endotoxin do have some role, but there is no cytolytic enzymes. The clinical manifestations, as we are dealing with the Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and we will take as a reference where this organism, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is caused by the what you call as the Rickettsia rickettsii. There is acute onset of non-specific signs and symptoms after the bite of the dermacentric tick for about 3 to 4 days time. There are no lesions. Then there is acute onset of non-specific signs and symptoms. And initially there are rashes, which usually appears first on the hands and feet, and then move inwards to the tongue. What we call it the centrifugal production of lesions towards. If I'm right, I mean we have the centripetal force and we have the centrifugal towards the center. So they are arising, the lesions, they arise on the hands and foot and then move onwards towards the tongue. Compared to that of the some other disease that we'll discuss right now, where the lesions first appear on the tongue and then they move on to the periphery. The severe cases, we can see the disseminated intravascular coagulations, and there is circulatory collapse, may leads to death. And the tick, as we know, belongs to the dermacentre variabilis. It acts as a reservoir and it is the source of transmissions. The transovarian route of transmission within the tick is very important. One tick transmits the organism to the other tick, and if the tick die automatically, they cannot be able to. They cannot be. I'm sorry for this. So I'm sorry for that. The transovarian route of transmission is within the ticks, and not to the humans. So the Rocky Mountain spotted fever, the tick, as we all know, responsible for the transmission and as a reservoir is the dermacentre variabilis. The most cases of Rickettsia rickettsii or Rocky Mountain spotted fevers, they occur during spring and summers. They invade the endothelial cell lining of the capillaries and causing vesiculitis, which is a typical lesion. So please remember, tick bite with vesiculitis, DICs, and this is what we call as the Rocky Mountain spotted fever with the Rickettsia rickettsii. Now, the lesions can spread to the brains, liver, lungs, GI tract, and even into the skins. 1 week after incubation, there is acute onset of non-specific symptoms. They are like influenza-like signs and symptoms. There is fever initially, chills, headache, and later on may have the abdominal pain, myalgia, and a rash. This is what we call the generalized signs and symptoms after 1 week of incubation. And then later on, you see there is mucopollular rashes, which are usually present first in the hands, then in the feet, and then move inwards towards the tongue. So these characteristics and patronized, synchronized, are stepwise appearance of the lesions, first on the hand, then on the feet, and then move to the trunk and other body areas. It's characteristic of, if you have a patient having history of being bitten by some of the, you see the ticks, has visited some of the mountainous area, and there are lesions appearing on the foot and then on the hand, right, and then to the tongue. Probably you can go for the tentative diagnosis of the Rocky Mountain spotted fever. So this is how the lesions will look like on the hands. You will not see the lesions on the palms of the foot and the hand. They are on the upper side, and you can see here the mucopollular rashes, and they can give you a clue, the typical appearance of the Rickettsia rash. Rocky Mountain spotted fever, initially, as I said, the petechial hemorrhages, then the quillets to become hemorrhagic area. The serious complications is the splenomegaly, hepatomegaly, thrombocytopenia, respiratory failure, and encephalitis. And severe cases, collapse and death can occur. Now we have the other organism, you see what we call as the Q fever, which is caused by Coxiella burnetii. And this Q fever, okay, it mainly involves the lungs. Excuse me, let me see what is that inside. Okay. the acute onset of non-specific signs and symptoms, as we have in case of other, there is frequent hepatitis with combination of the pneumonia, which is suggestive of the Q fever. So hepatitis with pneumonia is almost suggestive of the Q fever, and it is characterized by the endocarditis also. We have the typhus group of microorganism now. As you have seen that we have the epidemic typhus. There are several forms of typhus. We have the epidemic typhus, we have the endemic and murine typhus, we have the scrub typhus. Epidemic typhus is caused by what we call as the Rickettsia prowazekii. It's a louse-borne typhus, and it is caused by Rickettsia prowazekii. Then we have another typhus which is caused by the flea, what we call as the endemic typhus. It is caused by Rickettsia typhi. Then we have another typhus which is caused by Rickettsia susumigasi, and it is called as the sugar or the mite-borne typhus. So based or with reference to the environment of the arthropod vectors and the transmission of specific organism, we have specific disease processes. Epidemic typhus is caused by Rickettsia prowazekii, and the vector or the transmission is through the louse-borne. The endemic typhus is caused by Rickettsia typhi, and the transmission in reservoir is the flea. The scrub typhus is caused by susumigasi, and the reservoir or transmission is through the sugar or the murine-borne organism. No, the typhus begins with the sudden onset of what you call as the organism, which is worldwide in distribution, and caused by, you see, the humanus. This is another side of the sorry for this. Yes. All right, sorry, Alison. So the endemic typhus caused by Rickettsia prowazekii, which is a louse-borne typhus, it is a worldwide in distribution. Transmissions by the human body louse, what you call as the pediculus humanus. So in overcrowded area, in poor hygiene, it is very common. It predisposing the factors like crowding and sanitation. It contributes towards the spread of this infection. The initial symptoms are similar to that of the Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and the rashes they appear in 30 to 40% of the cases. The mortality due to this infection is very high. It's about 60 to 70%, and mostly due to the myocarditis and the involvement of the central nervous systems. Again, we have the symptoms, what we call as the fever, chills, headache, flu-like symptoms, pain, myalgia, rashes, on the basis of the appearance of the lesions and on the basis of the initial signs. We cannot really differentiate between the what we call as the Rickettsia prowazekii organism and with that of the other diseases. We have to see into that. Their macropyral rashes usually appear on the first on the hands, and that meningoencephalitis, and this is recurrent of the epidemic typhus. Recurrent of epidemic is what we termed as Brill-Zinsser. Brill-Zinsser is a name given to the recurrence form of the epidemic typhus. This is less severe. It has a shorter duration compared to that of the prowazekii, and it is rarely fatal. We have now the scrub typhus, what is caused by the Rickettsia susumigasi. This is also known as Orientia susumigasi. The organism has been renamed as. Mainly occurs in Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia. We do have some cases in Pakistan, but unfortunately they are not reported and they are not documented. The mite, they act as a reservoir and as vectors. Initially, there is again, you see the flu-like symptoms. Rashes in about 50% of the cases, which starts from trunk to extremities. Now, this is the difference between the Rickettsia
the signs and symptoms caused by the Rickettsia prowazaki, Rickettsia rickettsii, and the Rickettsia susumgasi. The lesions, they start from periphery to inside, from the extremities to the tongue, from tongue to the extremities. Okay, this is what we call the centrifugal appearance of the lesions. There is involvement of the reticuloendothelial systems compared to that of the endothelium, and some cardiovascular and CNS complications can also be seen. The diagnosis of Rickettsia diseases in the laboratory is based on to the serological analysis, and we hardly go for the isolation of the organism. Although the organism can be grown onto the living cell cultures, as we have seen in the embryonated eggs or onto the living cell cultures, but this is very difficult and very sophisticated procedure, and we hardly go for that. And what left is the serological test, particularly the indirect immunofluorescence assay and the ELISA, they are used. The Basefield test is another test which is used for this purpose, and this test is based on to the cross reaction of antigens which are present in many of the O antigens of the Rickettsia, and the cross react with that of the OX2, OX19, other antigen of the Proteus vulgaris. This test, you see, it is what we call as the detection of the anti-Rickettsia antibody, and it gives us a retrospective identification. So we cannot use it for the real diagnosis, but we can use it for the retrospective purposes for that. The treatment, you see, of this disease is very simple, and it's just a one antimicrobial drug, doxycycline, that we can use for the treatment. It's the reduced exposure can help in the prevention of this disease, and we can protect us by the clothes or using insect repellers in order to prevent these infections. We have to keep in mind the frequent examination of the skins and for the presence of the ticks. There are no vaccines available against Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Typhus prevention is based on to the personal hygiene. We have to take care of that, should be free from lysis, the hemolysis. Then, of course, you see the de-roasting of the area, that, with the DTT, and vaccine against the typhus and Q fever is available, and that is mainly used for the military profession. It's a killed well vaccine, killed cell vaccine. Now, the Q fever, which is caused by Coxiella burnetii, there is no vector. The impactant reservoir for this Q fever, they are the sheep, goat, and cattle. This is referred to be as Q fever, and Q stands for what we call as the query, because there was a big question mark in the initial, you see, the identification of this disease. The important properties of the organism, I will have the two different ways. This organism, highly dangerous microorganism. This is what we call as the single cell disease producing microorganism. Even a single cell can cause the disease. There is inhalation of the infected dust with urine and feces of the animals. You see the urine feces of the sheep, goat, and cattle. The handling infected hides and tissues, the placenta. Drinking raw cows are goat milk. So you see, again, this zoonotic disease. Q fever is a zoonotic disease, which is there by the inhalation of the infected dust. The dust infected with fecal material or with the urine of the sheep, goat, or cattle, are those individuals who are dealing with the animals, like veterinarians, abattoir workers, ranchers. They are more prone to these infections, and particularly the veterinarians who are handling the delivery process in case of large animals, and the organism can be present in the placenta, and it can transmit to the humans. There's no specific, non-specific signs in the initial stages after 1 to 3 weeks of incubation period. Mainly the lungs are involved in about 50% of the cases that we have seen.
And hepatitis in combination with that of the pneumonia is suggestive of Q fever. Really, Q fever, it is characterized by the endocarditis. Then chronic cases, liver biopsy show what you call the donut-shaped granuloma. There is subacute endocarditis, and the most common manifestation of chronic Q fever infection in the immunocompromised patient with prior heart damage is subacute endocarditis. The diagnosis of the Q fever is based on to the what we call as the serological test, such as we have seen the indirect immunofluorescence test, and we do not go for the isolation spike organism, although we can do it on the living tissues in the embryonated egg, but that is very, very long process. The killed vaccine is again available for the purpose. We have another important organism, what we call as the, the human monocytic leukosis caused by Echinella capiensis. This primary vector is the Lone Star tick, what we call as the Ambyloma americanum. This is the reservoir and the transmission vector. Again, there is a flu-like symptom similar to that of the Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Occurs in more than you see the 20% of the patients. Rashes, leukopenia, thrombocytopenia, it can also be observed. So we have seen that most of the members of the group of this rickettsia, they are transmitted through the vectors, insect vectors like fleas, ticks, spiders, and we have some of the organisms, you see the animals like cattle, sheep, goat, which are responsible for the transmission of the disease. Human-to-human transmission is there, very vague signs and symptoms. We cannot go for the isolation of the organism because it requires living cells. So we have to make a serological identification, and all cases of rickettsia can be treated with a simple antimicrobial chemotherapy. I hope you get some of the ideas. Thank you very much.